My parents told everyone I was in rehab, until my sister's fiancé found out who actually paid for the entire banquet. It started with a notification on my phone screen. Transfer complete, $125,000 to Chateau Lumiere Events. I stared at the confirmation, sitting in my cramped one-bedroom apartment, feeling a mix of nausea and desperate hope. That money was my entire bonus from a high-risk tech investment I'd made 3 years ago, money nobody in my family knew I had. To them, I was just Avery, the mousy middle school history teacher who wore thrift store cardigans and drove a 10-year-old Honda. To them, I was the failure who never lived up to the sparkling potential of my younger sister, Bella. Bella was marrying Julian, the heir to a shipping fortune. His family was old money, the kind that intimidated my parents into a state of constant, frantic performance. My mother and father had promised Bella the wedding of the century to impress their new in-laws, a promise their maxed-out credit cards couldn't keep. So, I had stepped in. I wanted to be the hero. I wanted, just for once, to see my mother look at me with the same adoration she reserved for Bella. "We'll pay you back when the house market turns," my father had lied, clapping a hand on my shoulder a month ago. "You're saving the family honor, Avery." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Then came the phone call, less than 24 hours before the ceremony. "Avery, honey." My mother's voice was too high, too sweet. It was her bad news voice. "Listen, we've been talking with Bella and the wedding planner. We think it might be better if you didn't attend the reception tomorrow." The phone grew slippery in my hand. "What? Mom, I'm the maid of honor. I paid for the venue. I paid for the catering." I know, she rushed on, her tone hardening. "But Julian's family, they're very particular. They're judgmental people, Avery. And let's be honest, you look exhausted lately. Your hair, your skin, you don't look healthy. We don't want them thinking we don't take care of our own. It would be humiliating for Bella if her sister looked like a charity case next to the bridesmaids." I couldn't breathe. "You're uninviting me because I don't look rich enough?" "We're protecting you," she snapped. "And protecting Bella's big day. We'll tell everyone you caught a bad flu. Just stay home, rest, and we'll bring you some cake on Monday. Don't be selfish, Avery." The line went dead. I sat there for an hour, the silence of my apartment screaming at me. They took my money, my savings, my dignity, and now they were erasing me from the picture. The old Avery would have cried and obeyed. The old Avery would have curled up in bed, convinced she deserved to be hidden away. But then my phone buzzed again. A text from my cousin, oblivious to the ban. "Hey, heard about this situation. So brave of you to get help. We're all rooting for your recovery." My blood ran cold. Recovery? I stood up, my legs shaking not with sadness, but with a cold, vibrating fury I had never felt before. They weren't just hiding me. They were rewriting my reality. I had a choice. I could stay home, let them paint whatever pathetic portrait of me they wanted, and vanish into the background as I always had. Or I could go. I walked to my closet. I didn't have a bridesmaid dress anymore. Bella had likely given it to one of her sorority friends by now, but I had a sleek, emerald green silk gown I'd bought for an investment gala I never attended. I pulled it out. I wasn't going to the wedding to celebrate. I was going to investigate, and if they pushed me, I was going to burn the Chateau Lumiere to the ground. The Chateau Lumiere was a sprawling vineyard estate in Napa Valley, a place that smelled of lavender and money. I parked my beat-up Honda a mile down the road and walked the rest of the way in my heels, the gravel crunching under my feet like grinding teeth. I slipped in through the catering entrance. The staff didn't stop me. I moved with a purpose that suggested I belonged, even if my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The reception hall was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling. Tables were draped in heavy white linen, groaning under the weight of imported orchids and silver cutlery. It was perfect. It was expensive. It was mine. I stayed in the shadows of the colonnade, watching the guests mingle. There were senators, tech moguls, and Julian's intimidatingly elegant parents. And there was my family. My father was holding court near the bar, looking dapper in a tuxedo I knew I had paid for. My mother was fluttering around Julian's mother, laughing a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. And Bella. Bella looked radiant, floating in a Virawan gown, the center of the universe. They looked so happy without me. That was the knife in the gut, the realization that my absence didn't create a hole in the family. It made the picture complete. I was about to turn around. The pain was too much. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe I didn't belong here. Maybe I was just the wallet, the ugly infrastructure that held up the beautiful facade. Then the speeches began. My father took the microphone. He stood in the center of the dance floor, raising a glass of vintage champagne. "Raising 2 daughters is a challenge," he began, his voice thick with performative emotion. "But seeing Bella today, I know every sacrifice was worth it. We wanted to give her the world, and looking around this room, I think we managed it." He paused for applause. I gripped the cold stone of the pillar I was hiding behind. "We managed it. But our family is not complete tonight," he continued, his face falling into a mask of solemn sorrow. He gestured to my mother, who dabbed at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. "As many of you know, our eldest daughter, Avery, could not be here." The room went quiet. Julian, sitting at the head table, looked concerned. He was a good man, decent. I had always liked him. He looked confused. "Avery has been struggling for a long time," my father sighed into the mic. "We tried to keep it private, but addiction is a terrible disease." The air left my lungs. The world tilted on its axis. "She checked into a rehabilitation facility yesterday morning," my mother chimed in, stepping up to the mic, her voice trembling. "It broke our hearts to send her away on the eve of her sister's wedding, but we had to intervene. She's not herself. The drugs have taken our sweet girl." A collective murmur of pity rippled through the crowd. I saw Julian's mother lean over and pat my mother's hand. I saw my cousins shaking their heads sadly. They hadn't just uninvited me. They had murdered my reputation to explain my absence. They had turned me into a tragedy to make themselves look like saints. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. I wanted to scream, but my throat had closed up. I turned to flee, to run back to my car and drive until the gas ran out. I couldn't fight this. Who would believe the junkie over the grieving parents? I took a step back toward the exit, tears blurring my vision. "Excuse me, miss?" A hand touched my arm. I jumped, nearly knocking over a vase. It was the venue manager, a man named Henri. I knew him. We had exchanged dozens of emails over the last 6 months. He looked stressed, sweat beading on his forehead. "Miss Avery?" he whispered, squinting at me in the dim light. "Thank God. I didn't know you were here. Your father said you were indisposed." "I am," I choked out. "I'm leaving." "Please, wait," Henry pleaded, blocking my path. "We have a situation." The groom's father ordered 6 bottles of the 1945 Romani Conti for the head table. "It's an extra $40,000. The card on file, your card, flagged it as suspicious activity because of the amount. It declined. I need a physical override or a different card immediately, or I can't serve the wine." I stared at Henri. The irony was sharp enough to cut bone. My parents were on stage weeping about my drug addiction, while the man running their show was begging me to approve a $40,000 wine upgrade. "They want the wine now?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, hollow, cold. "Yes, the sommelier is waiting. The groom's father is getting impatient. I tried to ask your father, but he waved me off and said to put it on the tab." Henri rolled his eyes slightly. "There is no tab. The contract is paid in full up to this point, but extras require immediate clearance." A plan formed in my mind. It wasn't a good plan. It was a nuclear plan. It was the kind of plan that ends relationships forever. "I'll handle it," I said. "Thank you." Henri sighed, relieved. "Do you have the card?" "I have the app," I said. "Come with me." I didn't head for the exit. I walked out of the shadows. I stepped onto the marble floor of the reception hall. The click-clack of my heels was lost under the sound of the string quartet that had just started playing. My parents were leaving the stage, hugging guests, basking in the sympathy they had harvested from my destruction. I walked straight toward the head table. Henri followed me, looking nervous, clutching his payment terminal. The first person to spot me was Bella. She was raising a glass to her lips, and she froze. Her eyes went wide, not with joy, but with panic. She nudged Julian. Julian turned. When he saw me, his expression was a mix of surprise and wariness. He had just been told I was in a detox ward. Seeing me here, in a green silk dress, walking with the precision of a soldier, must have been terrifying. "Avery," Julian said, standing up. The music didn't stop, but the conversation at the head table did. My parents whipped around. My mother's face went pale, then red. She didn't hesitate. She went straight into character. "Oh my God!" she shrieked, loud enough for half the room to hear. "She escaped! Robert, she escaped!" The room fell deadly silent. The string quartet trailed off. 300 heads turned toward me. "Avery!" My father rushed forward, putting his hands up as if approaching a wild animal. "Honey, you need to go back to the car. You're not well. You're having an episode." "Security!" my mother yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Please, someone help her. She's high. She doesn't know what she's doing." The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I could see the disgust in the eyes of the guests. Look at the junkie sister crashing the wedding. I'm not high, Mom, I said, my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. Don't lie to us, Avery, Bella cried out, tears instantly springing to her eyes. You promised you'd get clean. You're ruining my wedding. It was a master class in gaslighting. For a second, I almost believed them. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was the villain. Julian stepped in front of Bella, looking at me with pity and sternness. Avery, please, let's not do this here. Let your parents take you outside. I just need to pay for the wine, Julian, I said calmly. What? Julian frowned. The wine, I repeated. I turned to Henri, who looked like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. Henri, the invoice, please. My father lunged for Henri. Get out of here. We'll handle this later. But I was faster. I grabbed the tablet from Henri's hands and held it up. $40,000 for the Romani Conti, I read aloud. To be charged to the card ending in 8890. That's my card. The same card that paid for the flowers, the food, the venue rental, the deposit. She's hallucinating, my mother hissed, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my flesh. She thinks she's rich. It's part of the delusion. Get her out. The grip on my arm was the final straw. It was the physical manifestation of years of control. I ripped my arm away. Henri, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a whip. Project the billing history. Now. Henri looked at my father, then at me. He was a businessman. He knew whose name was on the contract. He knew who signed the checks. He tapped the screen of the tablet and swiped toward the large projector screen that had been set up for the childhood photo montage. The screen flickered. The cute photos of Bella as a toddler disappeared. In their place, a spreadsheet appeared. Client, Avery Miller. Total paid to date, $125,400. Outstanding balance, $42,000. The silence in the room was different now. It wasn't awkward. It was stunned. I'm not in rehab, Julian, I said, locking eyes with the groom. I'm an early investor in Ethereum. I have been for 5 years. I paid for this entire wedding because my parents told me they were broke. I paid for it because I wanted to be a good sister. I took a step toward my parents. They looked small, shrinking. But last night, I continued, my voice gaining strength, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. They uninvited me. They told me I wasn't aesthetic enough for your family. And tonight, I walked in to hear them telling 300 people that I'm a drug addict. Julian looked at the screen, then at my parents. His face was darkening, a storm gathering behind his eyes. He turned to his own father, the man who had ordered the expensive wine. Robert, Julian said, his voice dangerously low. You told me you were liquidating assets to pay for this. You told me Avery was a struggling teacher who needed financial help. My father opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish on a dock. It's a misunderstanding, my mother squeaked. We were managing Avery's money for her. She's unstable. I'm stable enough to sign the checks, I said. I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. I turned the screen toward Julian. This is the authorization for the wine. Henri needs me to press approve. Julian looked at me. For the first time, he saw me. Not the shadow, not the screw-up, but the woman who had bankrolled his happiness while being treated like garbage. Don't, Julian said. Don't what? I asked. Don't pay it, he said. He looked at my parents with pure, unadulterated disgust. If they treated you like this, if they lied to my face, to my family, about their own daughter. He took off his boutonniere and threw it on the table. I don't want their wine, and I'm starting to wonder if I want this marriage. Bella gasped, clutching his arm. Julian! No, it's her! She's manipulating you! Julian pulled his arm away. The screen doesn't lie, Bella. Your sister paid for your dress. I recognize the charge. I looked down at my phone. The button pulsed green. Approve. I looked at my mother. Her eyes were wide, begging. Not for forgiveness, but for the money. She knew that if I didn't pay, they would be arrested for theft of services. They would be ruined. Avery, please, she mouthed. I thought about the little girl who just wanted her mom to look at her. I thought about the teacher who ate ramen noodles so she could save money. I thought about the rehab lie. I think I need to focus on my recovery, I said loud enough for the back row to hear. I pressed cancel transaction. Then, I opened the settings menu. Henri, I said. I am invoking the force majeure clause of my contract due to hostile environment. I am canceling the remaining payment for the catering service, effective immediately. The deposit is non-refundable, but the remaining balance for tonight's food and alcohol, that's on the host of record. Since I am leaving, I am no longer the host. Understood, Ms. Miller, Henry said, his face impassive. He turned to my father. Sir, I need a card for the remaining $80,000, or I will have to call the police. "We don't have it," my father screamed, his facade finally shattering. "Then I suggest you start washing dishes," I said. I turned around. I didn't look at Bella, who was sobbing into her hands. I didn't look at Julian, who was methodically pouring the expensive wine onto the floor. I walked out the way I came in. The sound of chaos erupted behind me. Shouting, crying, the clatter of silverware. It was the ugliest sound I had ever heard, and yet it was music. I walked to my Honda, kicked off my high heels, and drove barefoot back to the city. I stopped at a diner on the way home and ordered a burger and a milkshake. It cost me $18. It was the best meal I ever paid for.